And we are live. So, hello, everybody, and welcome to the first ever live show of the House Salt Book Club. I thought of a way to describe what this book club was, but I feel like the fact that we're starting 11 minutes late kind of describes the chaotic energy we're really going for here. But I'm going to let everybody introduce themselves, introduce their channels, and then as part of their introduction, they're going to also tell you about their star rating for our book for this month, which was Sorcery of Thorns by Margaret Rogerson. So we'll start with our star ratings, and then after introductions, we'll get more into the conversation about whether or not we like this book. Sam?
Do you want to start with your introduction?
Me, sure. Hi, I'm Maddie from the channel. My name is Maddie Ness, and I gave this book 3.5 out of 5 stars.
And I am Sam from Thoughts on Tomes. I gave this book 3.5 to 4 stars, depending on my mood.
Hi, I'm Paige. I'm from Minimal Bookie, and I give this book a solid 3, right in the middle.
Mina. I'm Liz. I used to be a booktuber, really. It was Liz Lit. I gave this a 3, but a solid 3. So.
Me? I'm Kayla, and you can find me on Bookadoodles, not often, but mostly on Twitter. And I gave this book 3.5 stars, but I'm thinking it's going to be a 3.
My name is Connor O'Brien. My channel is also just Connor O'Brien, and I also gave this book 3.5 stars.
My name is Lainey from Ginger Reads Lainey, and I also gave this book a 3-star.
My name is Jordan. I'm from the channel of Jordan Journals, and I'd give it a 2.75.
Wow. Oh my gosh. Okay, just so you guys know, we've been friends on Twitter because we met through BookTube for lots of years now. And part of the reason we were like, we should do a book club is because we don't ever agree on anything. We have little factions of people who think similarly or whatnot. But the fact that we are mostly agreed and that Jordan was the lowest star rating. Blowing my mind. So we'll just kind of jump right into the discussion of what worked and didn't work for us in this book. But I think we should probably start with the main character, Elizabeth, and how we all felt about her leading up this action and adventure-filled fantasy novel. Everyone's like,
I thought she was a very capable main character, but she wasn't wasn't brilliant to me. She didn't catch my eye that much. She was just sort of she could get things done. She knew things just enough, but she didn't really stick with me that much. That was my issue with her.
I agree. I actually thought she was quite bland. I was expecting her to have just a little bit more oomph. And when I think back and I'm what stood out in my mind about her character? And it's really, for me, just that she was tall.
Yeah. I kept thinking of that Tall Girl movie. Oh my God. I kept thinking of that Tall Girl movie every time she mentioned that people had to look up at her. And I was like, oh, she would really connect with that one Netflix film.
That and her sword. That's all I remember.
Yeah.
Her sword.
Everything about her that was special because she grew up in a library. There was nothing... her special powers were because she was dropped off at that library specifically. So I just feel like she was any other strong female character from a fantasy in YA to me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and Jordan mentioned her sword, but where did she learn all this training? I don't know, it never really talked about it or anything like that. And I was like, okay, I'll just ride along like this.
I think that she has a characteristic that I know is common in books, but that I don't like, and it takes her too long. She's so dense at times at the beginning, and even when she was I've been raised all my life to hate sorcerers, I get that, but the 17th time she's like, but they saved me. Could they be evil? I'm like, girl, it just took her way too long to really come around to the story. And I get what the author was trying to do, but it just kind of left me with a bad taste in my mouth about her as a main character.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that she wasn't offensive or anything. She wasn't I hated her, but I didn't have a whole lot about her that I was like invested in, because I mean she had like special abilities or whatever, but other than that I was just like, okay, she could be substituted by any other character and it would be about the same.
Mm-hmm. She's a bologna sandwich.
Yes.
So my dog's barking, but I didn't hate her like you guys did. Well, not that you
I didn't hate her.
I would do the bologna sandwich any day of the week.
I don't like the bologna sandwich. Maybe that was that analogy where I was like, I don't think she'll stick with me by any means. Like, she's a character that I don't think I'm going to be thinking of at the end of the year. Like, oh my gosh, what a great character. But I did like the like child of the library feels. Like, I was very like, oh, that's like, I really like that she's like part of the library and her magic, and she like, you know, talks to the books even if they're not listening, and like some of that just like reader feels, which I know the author was like heavily leaning into, to be like, you love books, she loves books, all that kind of thing. But I did like that about her, and I did like the like tall girl, shorter boy dynamic, because you just don't see it. You just don't see it, man. Yeah. I was into that.
I think that, I mean, for me, part of what was like the best thing of the book was the setting. And I forget who said it already, but the most that I think the main character was great was because of the setting. It wasn't even her. It was the library. It was growing up in the library and that kind of thing. That really, and I liked her dynamic with Silas, and I liked her dynamic with Nathaniel, but none of that had anything to do with her as a character, like everything else around her.
Yeah.
Yeah. The setting, like the books specifically, I like that they could turn evil, that they had their own personalities. That was probably my favorite part from this book in general.
And like, she also had that little lexicon that acted like a dog, and I wanted more of that little character, but it like disappeared on page 20, and I'm like, okay. Yeah.
I mean, I feel like this is getting like really negative, like leaning. I liked her. I thought she was fine.
Yeah.
I didn't think that she was like amazing. She was fine. All right. So we mentioned him a little bit already, but how did you guys feel about Nathaniel as a character?
He was witty. Like, there were some lines that he said that actually made me laugh.
Yes, I did.
Yeah. I thought the narrator in the audiobook did a good job with like the delivery of some of his like comedic timing. Like, she was good at that. So
I definitely appreciated his comedic timing, because not like the book was dark by any means, but I feel like we didn't really get many light moments in the book. So when he did his little one-liners and stuff, I really liked that about his character.
Yeah, I think he was my favorite character in the book. I felt like he will probably stick with me more than the main character will.
I liked him, but I feel like there just wasn't like, I didn't feel like I gravitated towards either of those two characters. No. Throughout this whole book. I just didn't care. But I didn't hate it, but I just didn't love it.
I feel like when I started reading this book, we can talk about this more later with like plot kind of stuff, but this book feels like nostalgic to me, even though I've never read it before. And it was just that kind of like fluffy, fun, like, I know what you're going to do. I know what these characters are going to be. I know the tropes you're going to pull out, and I'm okay with that. Like, I want to just have fun with this. I don't want it to be anything like super groundbreaking or anything. So like, when they had all of his like trauma and like his nightmares and the snark and whatever, I liked that. And I liked their dynamic together a lot, actually. Like, I did like their, you know, he called her a menace and all this stuff, and I just like really liked that. But them separately, I wasn't necessarily super invested really in him. I mean, I kind of liked his like sort of found family with like Silas and stuff too, but it was all how they're relating to other characters and not just like them separately that I liked.
I did like their dynamic, and one thing that the main character Elizabeth did have was that it was like, I liked that she was like, no, I'm gonna fix it, like, I can't give up. Well, she had that kind of like fluff about her, which I enjoy reading about in a character. But I also like deeply relate to Nathaniel's like, wow, that sounds dangerous, gonna hide now. And that was like funny. And also it's like, ooh, catching feelings, never want to see you again. Those things about his personality I thought were really like funny, and endeared me to him as a character overall.
Yeah, you reminded me, the one thing I did like about him a lot was he's not like your brooding like love interest who knows everything, and like he's the one, he's like the protector of her. Like, he makes his own mistakes and is not always he's not always there to like protect her, and I liked that about him. Like, he wasn't just like a heroic character. It took him some time to warm up to the idea of going on this like quest.
You reminded me a lot of like different pieces of old YA male protagonists. Like if we took a bunch of them and just rolled them together, he would kind of be Nathaniel. Kind of would remind me of.
One of the comments just said that basically, I think it was Leah Jane said that she thought that the two main characters were actually Silas and Elizabeth. And if you guys know anything about me as a person, you know that I generally like morally great characters. I'm like, I can't, I'm out. But I freaking love Silas.
I love Silas. I love him.
It sounds like there's consensus. But so, what did you guys think about Silas?
I definitely love Silas. The of the book, because I don't know about you guys, but literally I flipped a page, they were in trouble. Who's going to get us out of this? Silas, like literally saves the day every single page. And I don't know, I feel like I was attached to him more than any other person in the book. And I'll remember Silas from this book.
Me too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he turns into a cat.
Yeah, exactly. How can we not like that?
Yeah, he had a lot of like cat-like qualities, and I just loved like the little details about him, like how into fashion he was, and like how clean he was, and just he was like a mom to them, and I liked his character a lot.
Yeah, I feel like he had the most personality.
Yeah, and like the narrator, when she switched to his voice, I was like, oh, I could just fall asleep listening to this voice. Because it was like so smooth and like
ASMR voice.
And like and quiet.
I think one of my favorite things was just like Silas interacting with Nathaniel, because he literally raised Nathaniel. So I was just like, oh, you're just such a sweetheart, even though you suck people's lives.
Because when we saw him in like his demon form, I was like, oh yes, here we go.
I mean, the best part is like the duality of Silas. That he's like literally like evil incarnate, but he's like, oopies, here's a mess. I'll take care of it. And you're like, yay.
Oh, the good demon.
I mean, they literally sit in a prison cell and he's like, don't worry, Silas will come get us.
Yeah.
And then he shows up.
But I think that the way in which they navigated like him as a morally great character to a way that it worked to me is that it never tried to tell you that Silas was anything better. Like he's always like, I'm a really bad dude. But through his actions, you're like, but are you? Yeah. It wasn't the book telling you like, no, he's a good dude. It's just like you interpreting that way. Like the book itself is always telling you Silas is evil. So you form all of these attachments. And then he has like the character arc of sacrificing essentially himself at the end to save everybody else.
Yeah. There's a particular trope about this, like, that's not particularly common, but bound crazily evil entity becomes found family for characters, which I really love. And so as soon as I saw it, I was like, I know exactly all of the things you're going to do with this. Absolutely. And I'm like here for it. So the fact that like, and all those things happened, I was like, I know exactly how this is going to end. And he keeps saying like, don't release me. And I'm like, sure. I know exactly what's going on. I
whatever you do.
I'll destroy the world and not save you. Sure. So like I really love that particular trope, and it's something that pops up in some other of my favorite books over the years. So that was something that I was happy to see with him. And just like the fact that he's just like he's almost like a grumpy butler dad. Yeah, that can kill everything. I like that for him.
It's like, he's gonna be like the fodder of this book, but you're still like, no, but I love him. I want him to be okay. I want him and Nathaniel and Elizabeth to all like be together and okay and happy.
Yeah, I think what Sam said is like what made me ultimately like the book is the found family element of it, because they all don't have anybody beside each other. So in the three interactions there is what really was the core for me for the characters.
One of my big complaints about this book is that outside of those three, and you could even argue that they're not like super developed, like they could have been developed a little bit more, but outside of those three, I felt like everybody else was super empty, and that the world in general felt empty because there weren't a lot of other supporting characters or like people or things that really filled it out. Did you guys feel similar, or were there any of the supporting characters that you felt stood out, like the villain or the best friend, people whose names I have completely forgotten. So that's where I am. How about you guys?
I definitely agree with that because, like, I thought about it after I was finished. I was like, well, there's only those three. And then I actually really like the library attendant that she meets when she, like,
Yes.
plays the royal like the royal library. I forget.
Percival, I love him.
Yeah. And he was like, oh, are you undercover? Like, oh, are you spying? Like, don't, like, tell me or anything. I would have liked more of him. But the fact that I can remember him versus, like, her best friend from back at Summer Hall or whatnot, that's, like, a problem to me. I don't know. And also, we don't have a lot of world building either, I feel. All we know is that, like, these libraries exist in, like, a circle kind of thing. I don't know. I just wanted a little bit more.
Well, I was also wondering that because like the world felt kind of like Victorian modern in a way, because like they have newspapers, so they must have some way to like print newspapers.
They said
things from our
the year
world
was like
pulled me out of the story.
1824, I remember that. She was like 1824.
Yeah, and they use like there was things from our world that kept pulling me out. Like they used pencils, and I think they used the month's June at one point, and then they kept talking about like the years as if they were like our years, and I'm like, is this supposed to be like a alternate history version of our world, or is this a fantasy world? So I felt like that wasn't really well.
Yeah, they also mentioned other kingdoms and stuff. Like, it just felt like there was enough information for you to be in the story, but like you wouldn't believe there's anything outside of like this one circumstance
Circle
that's
of
happening.
libraries.
Yeah.
Because I felt like we've talked about how we liked the libraries, and I felt like her settings within the libraries are very strong, and I think that was like a positive, is that for at least the first half, I'd say, of the book, it really focuses on like not on the magic system. It's more of the tools that are used for magic, which is the books and the people that help to facilitate that magic, even if they don't agree with it, which is the librarians, because they like, I liked them because it's like they're like the wardens literally of this, like these keys to magic, but they don't necessarily believe in the magic, which I find interesting. But then once you step out of that kind of system and that institution, you're like out in the world. I felt like she didn't really do a good job of explaining like what is the I don't really understand the magic. I don't understand the setting of this world. They mention a queen at some point, which I'm assuming is supposed to be Queen Victoria, like a Queen Victoria kind of stand-in, but like we don't really understand like how do they use the magic in daily life, and like, you know.
I wouldn't be surprised if the author had the idea for the library first, and the
definitely.
grimoire was like, "This is amazing," and the rest
That was one of the things that I was like the most confused by, just because like they are the wardens of these grimoires, and they were created, I assume, by using demons and like mutilating them into book form. But I just like didn't fully understand why she was so against sorcery, or like why certain people were against sorcerers, because like the sorcerers make these deals with demons or whatever, but then they have free access sometimes to the libraries and can use these grimoires. But then later in the book, when they go to the last library where it's like the last library that hasn't been attacked yet, they're like, you're a sorcerer and we hate you, so you can't like have free reign. I'm like, they literally walked all over the place in the first couple chapters, so I had a couple holdups and I kept getting kicked out of the story anytime she was like, I hate sorcerers though, because like everyone loves them. They're like celebrities of this world. They're like, they have access to the
so like what is
one was pulling books out and sending books to other places. What are the rules with the society when it comes to
and like what's their motivation for taking care of these grimoires? Like why don't they just destroy them if they don't like magic? I didn't really understand that. So, and
like when going back to what Connor said about like ooh, sorcerers are evil, she literally thought that for literally half the book, and like that's going back to what Maddie said about like her being stupid, like not on the uptake. So that's pretty frustrating.
This could have been okay. Like I don't need in my fantasy always like magic systems that are like George R.R. Martin, or like world building that is like that, or magic systems that's like Brandon Sanderson level of like detailed every chemical reaction that happens. Like sometimes I like those like more like self-contained fantasy worlds, but in that case you need stronger characters to carry it. Like it has to be a character-focused fantasy, and this one was a little weak on the characters and then weak on the setting, and then we're gonna get into the plot, which is was way too long.
No, it was so bad.
Oh, before we get to the plot, because I was out for a lot of it, I don't care that the magic wasn't explained. I'm just like, I don't care. Like, I think because I came into this with, I don't know how many of you guys read Enchantment of Ravens, her first book.
Yeah, I did.
Okay, so I already had like kind of just low expectations for like what the, like how intricate it was going to be. It kind of feels similar to Holly Black, no shade, where it's just like things are just like this, and I'm like, okay. So I was just okay with that because it feels like that same level of sort of world building where it's just like, look at these cool things, and I was like, I like looking at the cool things. Like I liked that the sorcerer's houses were very like magical, like the gargoyles that were guarding him, like when Nathaniel like was like in trouble and the house was like not our person. I really liked that, and just like a lot of the elements of it's like the magic is green, and like I just always see magic as color anyway in my head, so I'm like, yay. So there was a lot of those kind of things I just forgave, and then I just didn't care that there wasn't like a really cohesive world, political whatever, because I just was like, I'm getting into this for fun fluff, and so like I am not even expecting that. So I was just able to kind of be like, yeah, sure. Kind of, I mean, similar to like Harry Potter magic, where it's just like, this is just how it is. And I'm like, that's fine. So that I wasn't really that bothered by it. I was bothered by like some of the characters, like you guys were saying, were just, the side characters were not good. The villain was just like, what are your motivations even?
Yeah, the
like,
villain was really bad.
Like, why do you think that bringing this like giant archdemon that is like uncontrollable, like it just doesn't make sense. Like, obviously that kind of demon would take like all of your life. Like, I don't understand like why you think this is a good idea. So like that kind of like character motivations were what bothered me more than anything with like the world or whatever.
I think that goes back to like not having enough like character backstory either, like backgrounds of characters and history. Like especially with Ashcroft, was that his name, the villain?
Yeah.
But yeah, but like, you know, we got the story about the descendants and stuff, but I would like to see more. Like it was his legacy and that was his reason for doing all this stuff, but like why? Like I need to know more.
Also, were we supposed to be surprised that he was the villain? Like,
no,
was it supposed to be a twist? Because that was so obvious the moment he came on. I was like, yeah, this is the guy. Like,
he reminded me of the villain from Halloween Town. Like, he's like good looking. He's like really charming, and then you're like, oh, you're the villain, right? Like you're gonna.
What confused me was that Elizabeth was like convinced that it was Nathaniel for like the first 25%.
No,
I was like, girl, why?
Yeah, it goes back to like what I was saying, like that magic stuff would have been okay if the character stuff were better. Like if we understood more about what the villain was even doing or anything like that, it would have been okay that the rest of it was hand wavy. But yeah, that villain from the moment he like appeared in a puff of magic, it's like, oh honey, here he is.
I don't know if it reminded me of like this like the setting, but I don't know. Ashcroft kind of reminded me of how flat Mortmain was in the Infernal Devices series. I don't know who ever read that, but it was like, I got similar vibes, very flat. I don't know, as a villain.
Kayla, yes. Yeah. Like, as soon as I had to reappear. As soon as you said that, I was like, that's who I was thinking of the entire time because the villain was so pointless. I mean, at least in this book, it's only a standalone, which someone mentioned in the comments that they didn't care about this magic and like the world not being fleshed out because this was not a series. But Infernal Devices, man, stop acting like that was about anything other than the love triangle. Anyway, but this at least was like just a standalone of like one book where we had just like a shitty mustache twirling villain. So I guess it's fine.
Any other character things? I was trying to get to the plot, but Sam was like, no.
Sorry.
Any other character feelings? Okay, plot. How did you guys feel about this plot?
This book was entirely too long. Entirely too long.
Way too long. There were two climaxes because when so like the first one when I forget how it happened, but it's the first climax where like they decide to go back using that little blood magic potion thing. And like she's like, do you trust me? And he's like, do you trust me? And then they like disappear and stuff. So I'm like, okay, that seems like that might have been like a climax or something. But then like there's another climax towards the end, and I'm like, pick one.
I think for me that the thing that got me thinking that it was too long was sort of like the shifts in like pacing and then setting. Like we went from like the library, and then she was with Nathaniel, and then she was like in a mental hospital, and then it's like, God, I'm gonna get a job. I was like, oh my God, I have a job right now. Like I literally don't want to read about you having a job. So all of those like shifts to different things, I was like, this is like that advice about like putting on accessories before you leave the house, take them off.
Yeah.
You needed to take one plot out. And then
I would love to, I'd be so curious to know her process, because it really did seem like she had a lot of these plot points that she really wanted to incorporate. And it's like she had enough plot points for a trilogy, and she just decided to use them all and didn't take any of them off. And was wearing like a statement necklace, like 2 of them, and like a
huge earring.
It almost felt like for her first book, I know a lot of criticism was that it was too short and there wasn't enough. And so she like overcorrected and then made this book way too long on the other hand. Like she needs to find the happy, if she's going to do standalones, like the happy middle between the two.
I think especially if it's like this long of a book and covers all this stuff, then like the characters should also feel a little more real, and like she should have a lot more relationships. Like start to develop more relationships with all the different people in this world, and not just like Nathaniel. And that's it.
Yeah.
And I think that's what made it feel so long, is the fact that there were like tiny little good parts of like each thing, tiny good characters, tiny good plot, but then everything was so like level that it just felt like, okay, I need to speed up to 3.5 speed listening so I can finish this.
Well, the thing is that you speed up and you don't miss anything, because the resolution
I glazed over so much.
I do too. The resolution of a lot of these little mini plots is that like Silas comes and saves them. There wasn't any variety. It was like all of these mini plots that ended the exact same way, and I was like, why are we doing this again? Let's like move it along here.
Like going back to what Lainey said about having 2 climaxes, I feel like from the time that like the ball scene happened and they confronted Ashcroft for the first time, I was like, dear God, there's 250 pages that they're confronting the villain for the first time. Like, what needs to happen after this? Like, I was just whew. I don't know if it's because I try to read it quickly, but the ending just seemed to drag on for like 100 more pages than it should have.
Yeah. Who said in the chat that they're like, yes, I finally made it to the epilogue, and then the epilogue was like 15 pages.
I was very confused. The epilogue was 30 minutes, and I'm like, this is the epilogue. What is happening?
It was another chapter.
Yeah. Okay, awesome. How did you guys feel? I mean, we kind of talked about the second climax in general, but the ending, did it feel satisfying to you guys?
Jordan's very unimpressed.
No, not at all a blur. Yeah, I mean, they were referencing things that happened at the end of the book, in the middle, and the end that I forgot even happened because it felt like so long ago. By the end of the book, I was just glad to be done. That I didn't even feel anything towards anything that happened because I was just glad the book was over.
I kind of liked the ending. I thought it was because I was like waiting for that moment of like.
What happens at the end?
At the ending?
I know one thing.
So like Silas saves the day yet again and banishes the archdemon, the one that's like in charge of the world, and then they're just living their lives without magic because now they can't summon Silas back with his like true name, and then they're just doing whatever, and Nathaniel has his cane because he's permanently injured, and then Elizabeth, I almost forgot her name, goes back to the summoning room and tries to summon Silas using Silas instead of
I did
Sally
like that.
or whatever
it was cheesy, but I did like that.
The candles go out and I was like, oh, book 2. But this is standalone. But I mean, I liked it. I knew that was coming, but it was like satisfying for it to occur.
Yeah, like I said earlier, I knew that they were going to unleash Silas and that he was going to save the day. So I was just like waiting for that moment. Like I think I did find myself skimming like parts of the battle before that happened because I was like, you're just going to release Silas so we can help you. So like I was just waiting for that, and then I knew that he was probably also going to die and that like they were going to bring him back. There's just like there's certain little tropes that I was like, I know what you're doing and I'm just waiting. So I was okay with the ending. Was the like buildup of the like super big archdemon thing also just like also lame, kind of like the other villain? Kind of, yeah, because I'm like, you did nothing, but I was fine with it.
I was happy that. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, lady.
So I forget what I was going to say.
Sorry.
Yeah.
I was happy that Silas came back only because I feel like he did so much throughout the book that he deserved to live. He must have
He deserves a vacation.
He must have been tired, but he deserved to live.
Oh, I remember. Okay, so when they went to the ball, there's 250 pages left apparently, but I didn't read the book. But I listened to it. But like that was like the first time where I felt like, oh, I like this. But also like I'm a total trash hoe for balls and parties and all of that. So I was like, yes. And then when Silas died the first time, I was so sad. Like that was the first time I felt like I cared about any of the characters.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's like the one.
Yeah. If this wasn't like a book we were reading for this, I probably would have DNF'd it.
Yeah.
Really?
That was the one thing I cared about.
I think I would have too.
Who else would have DNF'd it?
I probably would have. Like after the ball scene, I was very tired. I was like, this is the end for me.
But we all gave it 3 stars, which is like, it's like
okay, but two are Silas. And the other one was just I got through it, so I mean at least I got somewhere. But,
for Silas.
Am I the only one that wouldn't have DNF'd it?
No, I would have. I finished it like months ago for myself before I knew we were covering it on this. So
yeah,
I don't think that I would have hard DNF'd it. I think I would have just like ended up picking something else up and like getting distracted by other things continuously, and then being like, I guess I'm just not going to finish that one.
Yeah, 6 months later.
I mean, and I did finish it because I was listening on audio and I like sped parts up. And as I was trying to reread, I skipped the whole mental hospital, like those 4 chapters. I was like, don't eat it, and I like kept going. So that's kind of how I made my way around it. But people in the comments are really split over Silas potentially not being dead at the end and like coming back again. But I felt like it was kind of fan servicey in that way, but I liked it.
Yeah.
I mean, I get it. Like, it's like he died twice, so maybe he should just stay dead. Like, come on, let your characters die and be done with them. But also, like, I love characters, so. And he's not the same because it's a different name now.
Yeah. He died twice too. It's fine.
Okay. This is something random that I thought of, but like, did Elizabeth pass out like a lot during this book?
A lot. She kept going to black. She kept fading.
Right? There's so many like fade to black, like scene enders, and I'm like, listen, I'm 28 years old and I've never passed out before, like from pain or anything.
Lainey, have you been in a world that has like sorcerers and magical grimoires that are turning into monsters?
But some of it, sometimes her passing out felt like kind of like
just
that.
Because,
she was so overwhelmed.
I think that added to the like Victorian Gothic, where like everyone's constantly fainting in those. I was like,
and the like hysteria for women.
Yes. Yeah.
Her brain was too big because she read too many novels or whatever.
I feel like, because Maddie, you were mentioning that you skipped the hospital scenes or whatever, but I feel like that was like with the hysteria thing, like people would commonly like dismiss women because they were like saying something that they didn't like, and they're like, oh well, you're hysteric, off you go. So I feel like that's what that was going for. It kind of disrupted everything else that was happening, but I kind of appreciated that being included in it and like the comments that the author made through that scene. But it was very, like, this is what I'm doing, this is the hospital scene, she's hysteric. So
that part sort of reminded me of like Ladies Guide to Petticoats and Piracy. Just sort of like you're trying to like have that strong like historic female character, but it sort of felt shoehorned in. Like you could have just shown us this like through actions of the characters instead of like spelling out the fact like, oh, women are dismissed in this world. Like, yes, we know.
Yeah. Sorry, I was looking at the comments, so Somebody, but Leah Jane again made a really good point about how like Silas's death didn't feel like emotionally manipulative, like a real death, because it's like part of being a demon is like this constant like, you know, coming back or whatnot. So that yeah, I'm going with that. That's why I liked it. Yeah. Okay. We've mentioned other books like kind of in and out as we've been talking about this. And I always figure that whenever we're going to be talking about books, it's always going to lead us to like tying into other media. So regardless of whether or not you liked it, do you have any recommendations for people based on this? Like, if you like this, you might also enjoy this. Or if you disliked how Margaret Rogerson did it in this book, you might like this somewhere else better.
The one book that came to mind for me was A Shadow Bright and Burning. Like that series sort of has a similar setting with magic in the Victorian setting. And I kept like thinking of that while I was reading. And I did enjoy the world building in that one. So
yeah, that one's really fun. I actually was thinking of that when I was reading it too, but then forgot about it after. But yeah, that has a similar world with like sorcerers and stuff. For me, the trope of the magical contained entity that helps you and turns into cats is from the Abhorsen series by Garth Nix. Margaret is the creature in that series, and he's like this magical entity that really hates the Abhorsen family, but that they contained, and now he has to help them, and he's pissed about it. And there is like that trope of like, don't ever release me because I'll kill you kind of thing going on. And it's a kind of a classic YA.
So I hadn't thought about this until you mentioned that trope. And as soon as you said it, I was like, oh, House Moving Castle. And Calcifer is like the fire demon that they keep in a little, like he's their fire to like cook and stuff. And he's so upset. He's like, I'm a demon. You're cooking on me. This is awful. But it is also like a found family sort of thing, magical. Obviously like a very well-loved series or whatnot. But if you enjoy that idea of like having this super powerful being also like trapped and kind of like a maid servant sort of thing, you'll enjoy House Moving Castle.
I'm gonna say if you enjoyed the library aspect and Elizabeth as a librarian, I'm a Strange the Dreamer stan, so I would definitely recommend Strange the Dreamer because it's just wonderful and magical. I know it's very polarizing for some people, but I will forever stand by that book. So,
and then also for fans of the library, but also if you didn't mind the fact that this was like very rambly and over descriptive. The Shadow of the Wind by Carlos Ruiz Zafón is also about like books and libraries and a character that is coming of age, but it is also very rambly and over descriptive, but in a very beautiful way. So you might enjoy that as well.
And I never read it, but I know I wanted to know if you guys have read it. Ink and Bone by Rachel Kane is about like our world today if the Great Library of Alexandria was still standing. So did you guys ever read it? I'm not going to recommend it because I didn't read it. It's out there. It's
I recommend things you haven't. Anything we missed? Anything that you had in notes or that you wanted to talk about that we didn't get around to?
We didn't talk about the romance.
Oh, we did it. Oh,
yeah. That's why I showed up.
Apologies, Lainey. Lainey, what did you think about the romance?
I was so disappointed in the romance. Like, okay, that's like 90% of the reason why I read books is I'm always up for like the romance subplot. I tend to not read books that don't have a romance subplot. So I was so disappointed because I could feel like there was like some kind of banter trying to go on there. And I just like, everything kind of fell flat because I felt like Nathaniel was a better character, maybe a little bit, but I don't know. It just felt off. And then when they were like doing those like super like romantic tension kind of scenes, I was like, I don't care. Like, I don't care.
Yeah. Usually like my romantic scene, like my favorite part is like the ballroom when they go into the party and then like the big reveal, oh my God, she looks so beautiful, blah, blah, blah. But it like really fell flat and I was like, I'm just not feeling it. Like I was completely mad about the romance too. So I agree with Lainey.
I saw reviews that were like really excited that the romance was in the background. Like it wasn't like a major plot point, but I am also a fan of romance and I was like, more kissing, like, come on. And it just, I mean, well, that's very much a personal taste thing. If you will enjoy the fact that it was like barely there, you know, or in the background. Yeah. The first scene that she's like at the manor and she's talking to him, and then they get so close that then it gets like sexual tensiony. I was like, oh, ooh,
yeah.
But then it just like never really recaptured that. I mean,
I also think she just had like better chemistry with Silas. Not that like I kind of saw it like romantically, because it never like went fully where I wanted it to go, but like I was like, oh, okay, I kind of like this. Like when he chased her into the woods and then like everything like that. That's the trope that.
Yeah, if I had to choose, I would have preferred Silas with Elizabeth. I just was underwhelmed by Nathaniel and Elizabeth. It felt very like common tropey, and like I didn't actually feel like their characters would have connected properly. Like it just felt like they didn't really have chemistry together every time they were in the scene.
It got lost in everything else that was going on too. I think there was just too many other things already happening, and then the romance just got lost. And that's like a big thing for why I read books and I rate books. So like that's why my rating's so low. Because I need that romance connection, and it just felt so flat for me. And I
kind of went like what you
Silas
about how like there's so many plot points in this book where it's like okay, that kind of felt like that way for like the romance too. It was like, hold on, wait, let's stop here to like get this scene for like the romantic progression out of the way, and then we can keep moving on to the plot.
And it was like the author like picked her word that Nathaniel was going to call her. So like,
yes,
he always called her a menace, which I like when characters do that. But like, it was I don't know. It felt off, like everyone is saying. So it was just like,
listen. So I have a reading.
I mean, like,
with all of the couples in it, and all I wrote down for this couple was "you absolute menace," because that's all I'm going to remember and care about. So I really liked that like trope thing of her being like, you know, just like messing things up, and him like liking that she messes things up. Like I appreciate that, but I also wasn't like, I'm not going to remember them. They're going to be a couple that I'm like, they're fine, but I'm not going to be like, oh my god, OTP or anything.
Yeah. What really needed to happen was that they both needed to date Silas.
Yeah.
Like okay, yeah, there was like a point where I was like, I would like this if it was like a poly romance. All of them are dating.
I would have
for the fact that
been down with that too.
Nathaniel, which is kind of
I don't, because there was also some like weird chemistry moments between Silas and Nathaniel too, where I was like, oh.
Connor's like, absolutely not.
Keep in mind for this, for anyone that is watching in the future, Lainey will always pull up the weirdest, kinkiest stuff with anything. So just like be forewarned that like that we're not endorsing what she says. Okay, like just be forewarned.
Lainey's like, whatever.
Yeah, I'll own it.
Wasn't Nathaniel bi too? Doesn't he mention that at some point? But I feel like they should have utilized Silas then, because he was right there the whole time. But
they were all dating each other.
I was gonna say earlier that when you guys brought up the trope of like passionately yelling at each other, and then you inch closer, and then you notice how close you are, and then you like breathe heavily. That's my favorite trope, like Pride and Prejudice. That's my favorite trope. That was the only thing I liked about the romance, was that one scene.
North and South has that too, by the way, just to like pop in here.
Oh yes.
Yeah.
There was like a scene in the battle where like he had to press her against the wall or whatever, and she's like, "Oh, is he gonna kiss me?" And I'm like, "This would have been hotter than half the other scenes that he was."
But like that's my least favorite thing is like when they're in a fight scene and they're like, "Oh, is he gonna kiss me right now?" I'm like, "No, you guys are fighting. Like, freaking survive and kill some demons already."
Well, okay, so we talked a little bit about highs and lows or whatever, but if I ask you to pick one thing to do to this story to make it better, to fix it, or almost like if you were to take this as a basis and do the fan fiction of it, like what would that look like for you?
I would go all in with Silas.
Yeah, I was about to say Elizabeth and Silas, 10 out of 10.
I think, my easiest fix would be like, as her editor, cut 100 pages. Like, figure it out. That's my, hands down, my fix.
I would have developed the world more. As we were saying earlier, like, it felt like very isolated. Like, there was nothing else going on besides these 5 libraries, I would have made sure that there was some other things going on that people would get invested in the world rather than just like being invested, because this book has
Honor?
We all had that moment of.
I think the low should have been lower for her. Like, I feel like we didn't really. I feel like the stakes weren't high enough. Like, she kept getting out of things very easily, like the hospital and what's the bad guy's name? Out of his house. I think she should have actually gone to the hospital and actually spent time there and like had to find her way out or something. I just felt like the stakes weren't low enough for her to actually get out of, and just the pacing overall was really bad. So
it was very convenient. Like all of her ways of getting out of everything was just like convenience.
And Silas, like literally,
and Silas.
He was there all the
time. I also wondered why, why was she doing all this? Why did she care about saving the world?
Because she's a good person. I guess.
She's a good person, lady.
I mean, I think that her motivation was like getting revenge for her like motherly figure.
Yeah, that should have been brought up a lot more, because that makes sense now that you're saying that.
I think that was meant to be what it was, and also like saving the books. But yeah.
Oh, so
they bring up the director or warden, whatever she was, at the end in like the big battle climax scene, but you also can skim a lot of that. So
Jordan, I'm so proud of you.
Truly, in 100, I made like a bunch of predictions about how this would go. I feel like none of them have been right, but never in a million years would I have said Jordan gave the harshest review. I love it so much. Okay, are we missing anything? Dan is waiting in the wings.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think making it shorter or turning it into a duology, but I wouldn't want it to be a duology. Like, I'm very happy that this author does standalones. So I'm kind of like, I'd rather you just shorten it up a bit. And then I think it would be more along the lines of like a Holly Black story. I don't know why I keep comparing this to Holly Black. I think because I read Wicked King like shortly before this, but I think Holly Black stories have a very similar thing where it's just like things happen quick. Like we're not stuck there for very long. And I kind of like that. Like I didn't want her to be in the mental hospital forever. I was like, I don't want this. This is not fun for me. So the fact that it's like boom, 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 I was actually okay with. So yeah, making a standalone still and probably trimming the fat a bit would probably be better, or putting better stuff in the filler, I guess, would have probably made it a little better. But
someone in the comments made a good point, Lainey. Like everyone shipping Silas and Elizabeth, that Silas was like ace.
Yeah, like he did make a point. I saw that in the comments.
On anyone.
Yeah.
I mean, we're totally just basing this on like he was the best character.
Yeah, 100%.
That one, yay! We love it. But yes, that did come up in the story. Okay, would you guys read Margaret Rogerson's next book?
I want to read the Raven one.
Yeah, I like that one more, I think.
I'll still read this author. I've liked her stuff. It's always been just like a solid 3.5 to 4 stars for me. So and I know what I'm getting, because I feel like Enchantment of Ravens was similar, where it was like, I know what I'm getting here and I feel comfortable and I'm not looking in for like a ton of twists and things, and let's go. So yeah, I'll probably still pick up her stuff, especially if she keeps doing standalones. I'm totally fine with that.
Like I'm so like into standalone fantasy because like you don't see it very often, so I'll definitely try her again.
Yeah.
Liz?
It would depend on the plot. Like if I read the back and if it caught my attention, but it wasn't like she's not someone like, oh my god, I want to read her next book. But maybe if the plot was interesting enough.
Jordan?
Probably not. I mean, maybe like if Liz, like what Liz says, if it's interesting enough and maybe based on how long the next book is, that also might have.
True.
Yeah, if it's like another 400 or 500 page book, I might tap out of that.
How long was this book, like physically?
400 something, right?
Well,
400.
Yes, I think. Yeah.
453.
Yep.
Wow. That's long.
We read that.
Yeah, that's
guys.
a chunky book. Wow.
It's not like huge. It's not a huge book by any means. But
I mean, get ready for some of our later picks, guys. The chonk is coming. We don't want to spoil that for people, but like, think about a chonky book that's coming, and it's coming. So just prepare yourselves.
Oh Lord,
it's like, I'm gonna read that in my sleep. Speaking of books that are coming, we're just about wrapping up our conversation for today. So we wanted to announce the books that we have chosen for February. We'll tell all of the details about whose channel this will be on and time and date and all of that on our Twitter, which is House Salt Club is our Twitter. So we'll announce date and time and all of that. But we will be reading A Princess in Theory by Alyssa Cole. So a romance fic for our February, and also written by Black author for Black History Month. So I think all of us are in for reading that one, but I'm going to ask every month, are you guys in for who will people see next month for this book?
I already started it. So.
I will be here.
I already have it.
Liz?
I already read it.
Already read it?
I definitely will be there for this. Already bought it.
Sam?
I'm in. I already bought it too.
Okay. We hope you guys will be in as well, read along with us, join the chat. Thank you for all of your lovely comments in the chat. You guys have been rocking it over there. And I think that's it for our first live show. Unless I missed something. No, we did it.
Woo!
Awesome. All right. Thanks for joining us, guys, and we will see you next time. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.